10:30 is our time here on Sky 99.5 FM. We're settling nicely inside hour number 2, and we're determined to let our light shine today on the Breakfast Roundtable. We are going to be the change as much as we possibly can, and we definitely are going to be having conversations on the Breakfast Roundtable every single day, as we normally do, with people who let their light shine out there in society and try to be the change that they want to see as well. Speaking of which, on the line with us, attorney at law and member of the Police Service Commission, Martin George, who lets his light shine all the time and sometimes has to be a beacon and a standard bearer for those who can't, do it for themselves. Good morning, Martin George.
Hi, good morning to you, Jessamy, and good morning to your panel, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Your Honor, good morning.
How are you?
We need some supermen in the fray right now, some superheroes. Are you ready to put on your suit and your wings and fly?
All have to play a role, eh?
Yes,
Martin George, did this man not see the Dark Knight? Did he not see what happened to Harvey Dent
No, I didn't see that.
after the Joker got through with him?
I didn't see that one.
I'm going to get you a copy. Anyway, let's talk business. We're talking about conversations with the Prime Minister. I have a piece that I wanna share from the conversation last night in Maloney, where he's talking a bit about the crime situation, and also earlier over the weekend, the Attorney General talking about challenges that he's been facing, but indicating that he is working around the issues that are preventing him from what's the word carrying out the death penalty. Yes. Okay. So firstly, let me play the piece with the Prime Minister so that you would have a point of reference. Here we go.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something too. Some people were doing magnificently well in that kind of arrangement. And those who are making the most noise now about nothing going on, that is what they wanted to go on. Even if we want it to go on and we don't want it to go on, we don't have that kind of money. So we are going to ensure that as the projects come out, they get the benefit of competitive tenders, and our contractors will give us their best prices or they don't get the work. But I'm sure that in the contracting fraternity, small, medium and large, as long as we put proper systems in place, we'll be able to get better prices for the public construction. There's one other thing I want to touch on. The whole question of security and safety. Well, everybody calls on the Prime Minister to do something about crime. I don't think there's anybody who's more concerned about crime than I am in this country. But you see, there is so much that the Prime Minister could do. And as we do it, we have to make sure that those whose job it is to respond to the criminal element do the job that they are hired to do. Because I don't know there's any way that as an individual, any of you who are not involved in the actual work of protecting the country and providing safety and security could replace those who are supposed to do. What has the government done so far with respect to treating with this scourge of crime? You would see a response which says that we should have a state of emergency because this horrible, unacceptable situation of 52 murders in January requires a state of emergency. And that makes news. And many of you would be impressed by that. But you wouldn't know that there were 48 murders in January in 2014. In 2014, there were 48 murders in January. And earlier on in January, there were 43 and 44 murders in January. So for quite some time, we have been experiencing this elevated killings and the killing spree in Trinidad and Tobago. In 2017, it is far more than 2014. And in both those years, the country would have experienced an unacceptable level of violent crime. But we have in Trinidad and Tobago a police service that has approximately 6,000 regular police officers and another 2,000 in the Special Reserve. So for the size of the population, we have 8,000 people whose job it is to react to this development. That ratio of policemen to citizens is above the world average. Across the world, you don't have 8,000 policemen policing at 1 million people. And of course, you would have seen recently a statement from one of the international agencies who have studied the issue that Trinidad and Tobago spends more on security than anybody else in Latin America. When we put those two things together, what we have been doing at the level of the National Security Council and its government is trying to make sure that we have in place a police service that is fit and efficiently working on the issue of their daily assignment. That is what we have been doing. And there have been significant hurdles, which I won't go into now because some of you are sure to raise it, and we respond to you as you raise it. But the bottom line is, it is not that we have not been providing resources to the police service. It is not that we have not provided human resources or financial resources. It is just that there are a whole series of tangled systems which are guaranteed not to give you the result that you are looking for. And what we have been doing is trying to untangle those arrangements, and we have started to do that by putting in place this manpower audit of the police service. Because if we have enough men and we're putting as much resources as the country could afford and putting record-breaking amount of resources, clearly something is wrong. And that is what the manpower audit, a team that is led by Professor Ramesh Deusaran and some other persons who have the skills, and we are joining, they're being joined this week by somebody from the UK, the police management of the UK, joining that team to examine and report to you what exists as the state's response to crime fighting. Today I met with that group and I gave them the assurance that as quickly as they could do that assignment and give you a report as to the state of play, that report will go to the parliament.
All right, so that's all that we're going to take from that. But Martin George, your reactions, your comments to what you would have heard from the Prime Minister in that clip.
Well, certainly in terms of what he says as regards not shifting the responsibility, I've always been a very strong and firm advocate of that. And while we recognize that there are two major facets to the problem, which is societal and policing, we must ensure that while we do lay the blame on society for where its failings are, we don't ever do so in a way that seeks to shift responsibility from the police service. And I have said before, and I will say again, that I'm not sure at all that it is really the role or the duty of the police to be pointing fingers at society and saying, well, there are societal problems. We know that. We are aware of that. And let the psychologists and the sociologists do so. But I'm not sure that the public necessarily buys into it when that kind of shifting of responsibility comes from the police, because they always then make it seem like it's an excuse. So I think that's what the Prime Minister was trying to address there. And I certainly agree with him in terms of that. Let us never shift that responsibility. The basic responsibility for our safety and security resides with the police service, and they must at all times be held accountable for that. While we do recognize that society has a role to play in terms of, the development of our young people and attitudes and, the behavior. So I think on that point, I certainly agree with him. On the point of the manpower strength of the police service,
yes.
I think it is more than adequate. It's a question of how the resources are utilized. I don't think we have a good record of utilizing the resources properly, and I think if we really examine it, there are many, many ways that you see police officers, their time is being wasted. When you think of how many officers are on suspension for either disciplinary charges or whatever, and these things are just languishing for years and years and years. I have seen circumstances, Jessica, where officers have been on charges and they have actually retired and the charges have not been completed. So therefore, what happens is that the salary that is deducted from their pay, that has to be returned to them once they retire, and the matter remains unresolved. So these are ways that the resources are wasted.
So, Martin George, if the Prime Minister concedes that they are getting bad results from all the things they have done with these extravagance of resources and so on, why is it necessary now to do an audit? He said that the international organization says we are what normally happens as far as ratio of police to population is concerned, we are overcompensated. Then what is the government now to do?
Well, I think the audit is going to delve down more into the details. In other words, to see where the police officers are being used, where the resources being applied. So I think that's where the manpower audit comes in. It's not just a matter of determining that, well, look, we have this number of police officers. I think it's a question of where are you utilizing your officers? Where can you use them better? How can you better deploy them, rearrange your systems so that you have a more effective policing. There is a lack of policing in Trinidad and Tobago. We have plenty police, but not much policing going on. That's the problem.
The bottom line is we have plenty police. We have quantity, but now they need to ascertain the quality. Because there are officers who've been going back to school, who've been upgrading their skills. Even if they can't get the training from the service, they're getting it on their own. But that doesn't show up.
On that note, I'll tell you something. I think the commissioner needs to look into that, because I'll tell you, what I have recognized, most of these police officers who are doing extra studies, and they're doing it for their own benefit. It is not benefiting the service. I'm sorry to say, when you look at it, you examine it, most of them, they're doing their qualifications, they are doing it to benefit themselves. So therefore, they can automatically get promotions to a higher grade, because once you have a certain level of academic qualifications, you get the promotions. But the point is, you ask yourself, how much are these studies directly related or directly impacting on their job performance? And I'm not sure if you do that type of analysis, you will feel or find that there is that cost-benefit analysis. So they get time off for studies, they may get study allowance, they may get study leave, whatever, and they upgrade themselves, but most times it's just for their personal benefit. If it is that they have to do studies, I think the commissioner needs to step in. He needs to determine, okay, we need forensic experts in the police service, so I'm sending you on a forensic course, we're sponsoring you, but when you come back, you must do 5 years service or whatever in this area. So then, now you will be able to get the benefit of it. But when a police officer goes and studies law and does a law degree and, upgrades himself, he gets promoted automatically. He gets to be able to now retire or leave the service at a higher grade. Then he immediately goes out and opens a law practice. So you ask yourself, what has the service benefited from that? We need to examine that, because most of them, they're off studying, doing their own thing, and it's not really benefiting the police service. So that's what a manpower audit should reveal. They should be looking at things like that.
I've heard of officers who've gone off to do MBAs and management courses, and even things like psychology and social work and all of that. And I'm just thinking there must be a way for the service to utilize those skills as well, because it does need them. It does have a problem with management issues. It does have a problem with...
Those officers may come back and may not be working in those particular areas. So therefore, you ask yourself again, how is it benefiting the service? So therefore, there's clear need for proper overall management of the service. And I know that one of the things that the government had proposed was that they want to look at the question of a police management authority. And maybe by whatever name you call it, there clearly is need for something of that sort, because I don't think the police service is managing itself as effectively as it could or should.
So, Mr. George, in the assessment of where we are, the question needs to be asked, how did we get here? And as the Prime Minister, they're trying to drain the pond, as it were. He had only identified 2 fishes. That of the societal problem and that of the policing. But what about the judicial system, the bottlenecking? Nothing was mentioned to address that as one of the fishes. That's when they drain the pond, that's in there too.
Well, the thing is, I could tell you what is happening, and I know for sure the Attorney General is definitely trying to implement some changes, and along with the judiciary, one of the things that they're doing immediately is the criminal procedure rules. The same way that the civil procedure rules 1998 have made a serious impact on the civil jurisdiction. The criminal procedure rules, which are due to come in effect in April, those rules are going to definitely have the same type of impact in terms of helping to speed up the process. So at least that's one thing that's being done. I know in terms of the legislative side, Attorney General Faris Alwari has proposed several pieces of legislation that he wants to bring in to try to assist in terms of speeding up the process. He's even talking about having a tracking unit to track the cases of those who are on death row, because they have all these appeals to the international bodies, but the point is it's a cat and mouse game. So you have to kind of catch them when they're napping. That's how they got Ashby. They were able to hang Glenn Ashby, if you recall.
Yes.
It was in between his appeals they were able to, so he had just lost one and he hadn't yet filed one. The next step. And I think that's how they were able to, implement the death penalty. And I think that's what the Attorney General says. He says he's set up a case management unit whereby they are tracking all the appeals. So I think that's what they're looking at in terms of the implementation. Because at the end of the day, the death penalty remains the law in Trinidad and Tobago. And if it's the law, it should be carried out.
As you make that point, and we've segued into this part of the discussion, I just want to play the interview, the story with the Attorney General, just to refresh everyone's memory on the content.
As a citizen, do you feel unsafe in this country?
Yes, I do.
Former Prime Minister Basdev Pandey is echoing the sentiments shared among many across the country that he no longer feels safe. Speaking at an event hosted by Presentation College in San Fernando on Sunday, Pandey said that those charged with the responsibility of addressing the crime situation and restoring confidence in the citizenry have failed.
Neither the government nor the opposition have any plan. But first of all, I know they know what to do. They don't have the guts to do it.
Meanwhile, Attorney General Faris Alwari has reiterated the government's zero tolerance on crime and maintained that the death penalty has not been suspended.
The hangman is employed. There are 33 people who are subject to the death penalty right now. 11 of them have had Pratt and Morgan applied, so they can't be hanged. But we are tracking case by case in a case management unit at my office, and the first opportunity to apply the law, it will be applied. It hasn't been tracked for many, many years. This office represents the first time that it's being done, and you will expect that it will be done as soon as it is possible because it's the law of the land.
Jesse Ramdale, CNC3.
So just as you said, it's the law of the land, and he's going to make sure that the law of the land is carried out in this respect.
Well, I mean, I like the phrase where he says the hangman is employed, because, I mean, it certainly is true, but it's true in the sense of, if you recall an ad for, Maytag Repair, the Maytag repairman, where they showed him sleeping all day, and he's employed also,
Oh boy. Yes, indeed. Sometimes, Mr. George, if there is, in a particular country there is a particular area where it seems out of control, the president or the prime minister may divest himself of a particular portfolio and take on that particular portfolio. Do you think if the prime minister were to do that he were to take on national security personally, this would make any material difference?
Not at all. I can't see that, because the point is, unless you plan to act as the Philippines president and
yes.
start creating extrajudicial hit squad, then it's difficult for you to say, well, because I am prime minister or because I am president, I can make the difference. Look at Donald Trump. He's having a very rude awakening as to the reality of government, because in his businesses he can say, you're fired, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing the other. But in government, it does not work that way. So the point is changing the person to say, well, you put in the prime minister in charge. I'm not sure that necessarily is going to make any difference in that regard.
Making a difference, Mr. George, don't you think we probably should employ a new strategy in making crime less attractive?
Well, I certainly think so. And the first strategy we need to employ in that regard is to have police officers get up off their butts, come out of the nice air-conditioned stations where they're watching cable TV and ordering KFC and ordering pizza, and having a good time relaxing, and be out there on the streets actually policing. That's the problem. We have plenty police, but very little policing.
So Mr. George, Gibbs and the Watsky did that. And you realize what kind of treatment they got.
Well, right, yes. The union kicked up against it, the members kicked up against it, but at the end of the day, somebody has to bell the cat. Somebody has to be able to stand up and bite the bullet and say, look, at the end of the day, I am not worried about popularity or popular opinion. If you call Randolph Burrows, whatever his faults were, he certainly was someone who could not be concerned with what the average officer thought of him.
He strapped on his SLR. He strapped on his SLR.
So the onus then is upon the acting commissioner of police.
Well, ultimately, responsibility lies there. Ultimately, it lies there, and I've always been very clear on that. And even on the question of acting, I have said that is no excuse, and it certainly offers no hedge against doing what needs to be done. Because when you are acting in the office, you are invested with all the powers, all the responsibilities of the substantive commissioner. So, while people have been, saying, well, look, someone is acting too long. And, of course, I can understand the psychological and emotional toll that can take on you. And it's no way discounting that. But I'm saying in terms of your power and authority, you have no excuse because you do have all the power and authority of a full-time commissioner.
Didn't I hear him echo a sentiment recently that should crime not decrease, he would tender his resignation?
I can't say. I can't say.
Didn't you read that? Didn't you hear that on the news?
Maybe that
Mr.
was,
George, come on.
That was wishful thinking on some
Mr.
people's
George.
part.
You need to answer the question. You understand? Mr.
Wayne,
George.
Stop bullying the
Didn't you
witness.
hear?
Dr. Wayne, stop bullying the witness.
I seriously didn't. But
Don't make me bang my gavel now.
It would be an interesting statement if it was indeed made.
Didn't you read that somewhere, Mr. Carr? Didn't you read that? Didn't you hear that? I think I was abroad when I read that, eh?
Okay. Well, but sometimes there may be a caveat to these things. I do recall former Attorney General, Ramesh Lawrence Marge, when he was, advocating hanging, and when he was in the office, and he said there will be a hanging, and it will be in June. And then when June came and there was no hanging, people said, well, I thought you said there'll be hanging in June. He said, I didn't say which June.
He rejected.
Brilliant, absolutely. But Mr. George, what is to be said for the Police Social and Welfare Association, the head there, Mr. Seals, Inspector Seals? He says he's fed up with the killings in the country.
Martin George, while you figure out how you're going to respond to that comment, I've got to take a break and we will be back.
Sure.
Edison Carr, Jesse May Venture, and Dr. Wayne Haywood on the Breakfast Roundtable on Sky 99.5 FM.
And we're back here with our conversation with Martin George, attorney at law and member of the Police Service Commission. Just before we took in the break, he was asked to comment on a statement made by the head of the Police Social and Welfare Association, First and Second Divisions, Inspector Michael Seals. I think he was having one of those moments where he felt like, oh my gosh, I can't take it anymore. I'm so tired of all of this.
End of his tether.
Yes.
Yeah, but
I am
but
totally fed up, but he's a police officer and he's in charge of so many divisions in the police service.
That's my point. So the thing is, to throw your hands up in the air and say the sky is falling is not the solution. What he needs to do is engage in a constructive and meaningful manner with the hierarchy of the police service, with the commissioner, to find solutions, because there are several things, like for instance how you mentioned the situation with Gibbs and Iwatsky. The police association was one of the major opponents to the changes that were being implemented. So therefore they cannot on the one hand be running with the hare and then hunting with the fox at the same time. So they have to understand that there's a responsibility that comes with that type of representation and that type of power. And too long we've had scenarios where leaders of either representative bodies or associations feel that, look, their duty is to oppose the hierarchy or oppose the administration at all costs. We must move beyond that and evolve beyond that and understand that, look, there are times when, yes, of course, you will protest, you will oppose, but there are times when there's need for a collaborative and cooperative approach. And I would love to see him sit down with the management of the police service, the executive of the police service, and say, well, hey, listen, how can we motivate and inspire our members to work along with your plans? How can we find common ground? And then now you go back to your membership and you sell the idea to them and say, well, hey, listen, all right, okay, the commissioner and the executive of the police service have decided that, look, we need to move men out of the station, have more people on the streets, so this is how we're going to do it. And therefore, that's the role that he can play. That's where they can be effective, rather than simply, adding to the chorus of moans and wails as to what we are going to do. There are many, many ways that the association can play a very valuable role in changing the culture within the police service. They can also ensure that, look, in terms of the behaviors that are sometimes associated with errant and truant police officers, that they have, ongoing programs to show officers that, hey, listen, this, first of all, is not acceptable and it's not going to be, tolerated. So therefore, they should now be working with the executive to ensure that the disciplinary process internally is, working efficiently and smoothly, so that any officer who is caught with any, caught in any wrongdoing is quickly dealt with, is processed quickly, and either you impose a punishment or they're found not guilty and they're cleared.
And perhaps that's where the pollutant is. Probably that's where the pollutant is. And because you have these officers that are also aiding and abetting the criminals.
Exactly. And so these are the things that the association should be addressing and addressing publicly. They must not be afraid to confront their members on these issues. But you see, many times what you end up is that persons are in a popularity contest. So they want to be in favor with the masses, they want to be in favor with, so therefore they don't want to come out and speak out on these issues. Speaking out like this, like what we do on these programs, is not an easy thing, because it never makes you popular. Because when you speak the truth and you speak for the center, you speak for Trinidad and Tobago, it means that you are not on one side or the other, but you're trying to look for what is best for the country. And most times people don't want that. They want to hear you speak with a partisan political lens or political bias to favor their side, or to, destroy or denigrate the other side. And we need to move beyond that. Even in the parliament, our parliamentarians need to grow up. We've said that repeatedly on this program. We've had that type of discussion. Our parliamentarians need to go up and show some maturity. How can it be that when you're in government, you're advocating anti-gang legislation
and when you're in the
and
opposition,
saying yes is the best thing? When you're in opposition,
yes.
Oh no, we don't want that. Simply because you don't want the other side to look good. Come on, this is not little children in a schoolyard playing marbles. These are adults that we've elected who are supposed to show a level of responsibility and maturity.
Martin George,
we, the population, have to call upon them to do so.
And therein lies the root of the problem. Therein lies the root of the problem.
You were speaking a while ago about conversations between the police association and the management of the police service and so on. But when they had that day of total policing, they are saying it was just a few officers, who decided on their own. It seemed like there are certain cells, certain truant officers who can do their thing, get in touch with each other, and have a particular part of the country locked down without any sanction from management.
And that's the next thing. Up to now, isn't it a shame and a disgrace that the police service of itself has not brought these officers to account? You can't complete the investigation yet. You simply making excuses. Come on, it's ludicrous. It really is. And that shows again that there's possibly a fear or a hesitance to say, well, look, I'm bringing the hammer down. Look, the commissioner recently indicated that there are 2 senior officers that he's called upon and asked them to retire. And I saw there was tremendous pushback against that. But somebody has to bell the cat. Somebody has to bite the bullet and say, hey, listen, I'm going to take the steps to clean up the service.
Yeah, but the agency charged with that responsibility, the Police Complaints Authority, they actually want to, it's like a toothless bulldog, right? And they're going after Mr. What's his name? His name doesn't come to my mind.
Mr. David West.
Mr. West. They're going after Mr. West, to shred him, and he's charged with that responsibility, but nobody's being held account for
I agree, and the thing is, the PCA has been clamoring for more legislative powers And there's urgent need for, that legislation to be reformed so that they can have greater powers to effect their duties, because many times the very investigations that the PCA needs to carry out, they need the input of police officers. So if those same police officers frustrate the investigations, do not provide the information, do not provide the evidence, the PCA is stymied and they can't move forward. So that's what they're saying. They say they need the powers to be able to go in, to be able to take custody of documents, take custody of weapons, to be able to take control basically of a crime scene or a scenario, to say, well, look, we can now do our independent investigation, because you really can't be fully independent if you're still dependent on the very police service to provide the information that you need to investigate the police service.
I'm just wondering, though, with regard to that, I understand why the PCA would make that argument, but for the sake of being able to prosecute the case, you want to ensure that there are no loopholes that the defense can come up with that would say, well, the police did this or the police did that or whatever, and that's not fair to my client, blah, 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 and then they get off on a technicality. The other thing is, if there is a situation involving a police officer killing someone, then both the Professional Standards Bureau and the PCA should be working on that at the same time, shouldn't they?
I agree with you. I agree with you in that sense, certainly. And the point is, you always need to ensure that your internal disciplinary process is working alongside the external agency. However, at the end of the day, the PCA must still retain its independence.
Yes.
In that, I think if you have to give one body or the other the supervening jurisdiction, my vote would be in favor of giving it to the PCA.
All right, but would you want to have civilians having that level of oversight over the police service?
Of course, I would. I certainly would. I think it would be the best thing for the country.
But to my mind, the only civilian entity that should have that kind of oversight over the police or over any military or paramilitary entity should be the Parliament, shouldn't it?
Well, the point is, in terms of the Parliament, their oversight would be via the Joint Select Committees, whereby sometimes the Commissioner has to come and he has to give an account. But the point is that oversight is not a hands-on or a direct oversight. It's more statistical, it's documentary, it's in the form of reports and trends. So therefore, that oversight is basically distanced from the reality that takes place on the ground. Whereas the PCA, if it is that you're talking about direct offenses, that someone has committed an offense, a police officer, and someone makes a complaint, then the PCA needs to be able to go in and do their independent investigation. They need to be able to subpoena records and documents and books. If it is, for instance, a case of a police officer committing fraud in terms of their accounts within the police service, then they need to be able to get access to those books and records. But they are often stonewalled when they try to go in and get that information, because they're told, well, we can't release that to you, or you have to wait a while. So they have difficulties there in terms of getting that process done.
We have heard nothing further about that threat by the Commissioner of Police to fire two high-ranking police officers. Was it just a threat to sort of scare people into doing their jobs, as the case might be? Because he had demanded a report from the two officers why they shouldn't go. And I imagine they have sent these reports, because some said, but it's in the hands of my lawyers and so on. And there's a particular time frame. So what has become of that?
Well, I don't know exactly where it's at, but I know for sure that he did give them the opportunity to respond, and from what I understand, attorneys did respond on their behalf. So I'm not sure where exactly it's at this stage. But the point is, as I say, things like that are always a step in the right direction once you have your evidence to back up your scenario, in terms of saying, well, look, this call is justified. I am justified in calling upon these officers to resign from the service. And we need to go further. We need to go deeper. He needs to go within his service and say, hey, listen, we've identified 10, 15 rogue officers in this unit. We are going to deal with them. We are going to prosecute them. That's what he needs to do. It will not make him popular. That's what I keep saying. It will not make him popular, but at the end of the day, the country will love him for it, because he will be doing what needs to be done in terms of cleaning up the service.
He'll be on the right side of history. I've got to take another break, and we'll come back and probably take a couple calls.
In your car, on your phone,
The sky is everywhere. Sky 99.5 FM.
We take your calls now. 625-2759. 623-8255. 624-7729.
Andre, coming up on 9 minutes before 8 o'clock. We've got callers on the line. Hello, good morning. You're on the Breakfast Roundtable.
Yeah, good morning again. Morning.
Yes, Mr. Laramine, you have to be quick.
Yeah, what's the Mr. name there?
Martin George, you need to be
Mr.
quick.
Martin George. Mr. Martin George, the public has lost confidence and trust in the police. And that have to build back, because my personal survey is that I are getting nearly 7 out of 10 people about talking to police. I defend police a lot and try to show them the work that they do, they have to do that. But the public, everywhere you pass, them police is bandit, them police is thief, them police is corrupted. And that is a big barrier between the whole civilization and the thing. So if the government has to try to build back that trust and have men on foot, and I say that we have so much of big officers there inside, and they're not coming out to really work with the younger ones. Some of the younger ones, they just park up and they relax. And so, Mr. Martin George, I believe that the work that you're doing there is very good too, but get back the trust with the police, so information should go. Because right now, people ain't giving police no information. The other people on other stations getting more information than the police.
Thanks very much, Mr. Laramine. Martin George, your comment.
No, I certainly agree with him, and I certainly agree that, there is greater need for more police officers to be out there doing policing, and I will never stop emphasizing that point. Even in terms of investigative work and undercover detective work, I think there's much more that can be done in terms of trying to resolve these issues and trying to solve the crimes. How could you have so many murders committed for the month and so few detected? That is an embarrassment. That shows that something is failing, something is wrong, because that's what your police service is for. Don't say that you need to bring out the army and the defense force on the street. The role for policing is for the police.
Let's go back to the lines. Good morning. You're on the Breakfast Roundtable. Hello.
Hello, morning, Jesse May and Mr. Khan, Mr. George.
Good morning.
Yes, I believe somehow there's too much blame. The police, let us say that the police are a bit lax. They're a bit lax. There's too much blame, I would say, on the police service alone. The point is, nobody is mentioning the judiciary. Mr. Volney made valid points last week, and nobody seems to be trying to implement what he said. He said the problem lies with the Court of Appeal and the keep back in having these cases expedited. He spoke specifically about the Chief Justice. He spoke about the Caribbean Court of Justice. Nobody is taking up these measures or trying to do anything about it. We can never, notwithstanding whatever Mr. Alwari says, we can never beat Platt and Morgan under the present system. And that is my contribution.
Thanks very much, Dr. Coover. Your thoughts, Martin George?
Certainly, where the judiciary has to pull up its socks, I am in favor of that. But the point is, in terms of basic policing, you can't blame the judiciary for that. So, and the judiciary is taking steps in terms of the criminal procedure rules, which are to be implemented in April of this year, which will help to facilitate the speeding up and easing of the clogs and backlogs in the magistrate's court. So there are steps being taken, but the point is, it's not enough, and if that's the point the caller is making, I certainly agree, and the judiciary can do more, and I think that they ought to be trying to do more, but in terms of the role of the police and policing, let's not ever shift that responsibility from the police.
Good morning. You're on the Breakfast Roundtable.
Very good morning to you, Jesse, and to Mr. Carr and to Dr. Wayne.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. George.
Hi, good morning to you, sir.
Mr. George, you have spoken quite a lot about policing and the lack of policing and the basic of policing. Now, do you not think if we had more female police officers doing the administrative work, most of the administrative work that male police officers do you not think that would kind of solve the problem somewhat or to some extent? Thank you.
Not necessarily. And the thing is, I'm not sure that in this day and age we really ought to make that type of distinction, because
Indeed.
I have seen very competent female police officers out there on the field, and they appear just as good, or in fact sometimes even better than their male counterparts. So I'm not sure that makes the difference, because police work is not just brute strength anymore. In fact, it has evolved way beyond that, where it is now actually more brain work and intelligence gathering and cyber security, cyber crimes that you have to deal with. So therefore, it's not really that is an archaic and anachronistic view, I would think, that is not necessarily applicable in today's modern society.
Just to add another qualifier, much of the administrative work in the police service is now carried out by civilians and not necessarily police officers. Hello, good morning.
That's correct. Yeah.
You're on the Breakfast Roundtable. Hello.
Blessed day to you all.
Yes, hello. You need to be quick, please. We're running out of time.
Yes. Okay, yes, I will be quick. I don't stay long. Every government institution has break, and last night the Prime Minister and Mr. Steele have proved, and blaming the citizen of the land, they cannot do the job. They're supposed to resign and go their way. Have a blessed day.
Thanks very much. Ooh, that caller coming down on the Prime Minister in that comment.
Sorry, I didn't hear the comment.
He said that the Prime Minister was blaming the citizens for what's happening in the country, and that basically that's a sign that he can't do his job and he needs to resign.
Oh.
Okay. And in the same breath, Mr. George, do you envisage that any recommendations on the PM's tour and meeting the people will be converted into missiles that can be used in this war of crime?
Well, the thing is, I've heard snippets of the meeting, and while I appreciate the fact that the Prime Minister is coming out to meet the people and stuff like that, which is great, I think that there needs to be more in that he needs to come out with plans and programs that people can see are workable or will work in terms of developing a better Trinidad and Tobago. So it's not just a question of going out and old talking or going out and lecturing to the public or haranguing them, to hector them to say, well, look, this is what should be done. Let us sit down and come up with plans. So, and I think he ought to take a community-based approach to it, in that if you go to a community, then you say, okay, look, we need a community center, we need a playground here, so that the people can leave that meeting feeling, well, look, there are some definite sustainable plans. It's not just a general old talking, so that's my take on it. I know this was the first one, and I guess over time he will refine the approach to it, but I think it has to be something that leaves the members of the public with a feeling of accomplishment.
All right. Martin George, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time this morning on the Breakfast Roundtable. And we're going to continue to monitor the Prime Minister's conversations and also that manpower audit in the police service. Can't wait to see that get underway. We'll talk with you again soon.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Have a great morning.
All right. Another classroom session with member of the Police Service Commission and Senior Attorney at Law Martin George has come to an end, as is the second hour of the Breakfast Roundtable. We have got news up next.
Download our free Sky mobile app for iPhone and Android devices.
Total praise 24/7. Ooh, I can't get enough.
Watch, listen, send us a voice note or a picture. All from our free mobile app. Get it now on sky995fm.com/mobile app.
It's the one and only